Hey everyone, welcome to the short introduction video to our Locoia Flow Builder. My name is Jan. I'm going to give you a quick introduction on the different UI elements that you will find in our application, and then also on how to use the Flow Builder, the basics, what you can do where, and all of that stuff. So let's start by giving you a quick walk through the UI. So over here, this is your start screen that you will usually see when you log into the app. This serves as a sort of dashboard to just get an overview of how your flows are going, and you can see how many errors there are, how many successful flow runs there are, and the numbers of everything, which flows were ran last and which ones were last updated. So you can get a good overview of the health of your account, basically. And if you see this sidebar over here, this is what you use to navigate through our app and the different modules that it has. In the beginning, it might be a good idea to just click on here, because this will open all the descriptions for the different tabs, and it makes it easier to figure out which logo stands for what. And then when you get more secure in knowing where what is, you can just click this again, and the type here will go away, and yeah, you have a bit more screen real estate for the actual app. If you are German, you can click here and you can actually switch the language of the app to German, if that's what you want to do. And everything in here should be translated automatically, except for parameters of API calls, because we don't want to have any confusion when it comes to the ones that are in the documentation, and then there's a translated German name. That would be a bit problematic sometimes. All right, so here in this graph, you will see for every day how many successful and canceled and error flow runs there are. And yeah, this is super helpful to just right away see if anything is going wrong in your account. Then we also have the settings down here. Here, you won't see exactly the same options that I can see here, but the most important ones for you are going to be the connector auth. This is where you can manage all your logins with different applications. The file uploader, you can use this to upload any files that you want to use in your flows, such as XLSX or CSV files, for example. And the flow environment variables. Here you can set some environment variables, kind of like when you code. And basically, you can use these to look up stuff that you need to type over and over again in different flows, or that change frequently and get used in different flows. So you have one central place where you can update those with a few clicks instead of updating them in every flow. Then over here, depending on your account, you will see different logos. So the first tabs here, they are related to our automation platform. So this is the Flow Builder, the Flow Marketplace, and the Flow Monitoring. This is what you'll usually see if you're in automation. And then these ones here are all related to our dashboarding tool. So you will see the different steps in the ETL pipeline over here, and we would go into all of those in a separate video. Yes, if you have any questions or if you are not sure about something, here you have a link to our support center, which will conveniently open in a new tab. And here you will find all kinds of information on our tool. This is categorized into various categories. And for example, if you have questions on the Flow Builder, you can click on here, and then you will find chapters on all different kinds of topics. For example, the Jinja templating language, how our connectors work, stuff like that. And if you have questions related to specific connectors, you will find a chapter here. And there you can see all kinds of documentation for connectors, and also helpers, which I will explain in a second what's the difference between them. All right, let's jump into the actual Flow Builder module. And here you are able to see all the flows that are in your account. you can see what they are tagged, who last updated it. You can add a description to your flows, which becomes visible when you hover it. And you can also manage who can see your flows and yes, who can edit them. And if you click over here, you can create a new flow. But before we do that, I'll also show you the flow marketplace. This one, if you click on here, it's called marketplace, but don't worry, it doesn't cost anything. These are basically pre-built flows for you that you can search and pick whatever you need. These are just there for your convenience to get you started a bit quicker. If you have an idea on what you want to do, you can actually use this and search for stuff, and maybe you're lucky and you will find something that actually solves the case you're trying to solve. In case you cannot find something that solves your case, then we are actually getting into the real flow building here. So if we click on create a new flow, we are getting prompted to type in a name. For this one, I'm actually going to show you an example using Zoho and Cepdesk. So I will actually call this Zoho to Cepdesk accounts. And the status here, you can select draft, live, and pause. Usually when you create a new flow, this should always be set to draft. And then later, when you want to actually use this flow actively and it should run regularly, you can set this to live, and this will actually enable email notifications for failed flow runs. So that's very convenient, but we don't want that while we are building our flow, because when you're building, you are going to produce errors. That's just how it is. And getting an email every time you produce an error, slightly annoying. So now you can see the actual flow builder overview here. And on the left side, you will see the bar which has all the connectors. So if you scroll through this, you will see this quite a lot. But don't worry, we have a very good search here. So if I know I want to do something with Zoho, I just type Zoho in there, and there we go. We have Zoho. And also, if you scroll to the bottom here, you will find our helper section. This is this section. What's the difference between connectors and helpers? Well, basically, helpers are a subset of connectors, but the normal connectors, they are all related to one software or another. And these you will have to log into normally and connect with an API key or OAuth, whatever. And they allow you to get data or write data to an external application. Whereas our helpers here, they are not application specific. Sometimes they are file format specific. Sometimes these are to create logic in your flows, looping, making Boolean decisions, switches, all that kind of stuff. You will figure this out very quickly while you are using the flow builder. Excuse me. But yeah, this is basically everything that doesn't belong to a specific application. All right, I said we're going to use Zoho in this example. So let me drag the Zoho connector in here. There's one more UI part that I just forgot about, but this is over here, this bar. It's actually what you use to control your flows. So over here, you can run your flows, you can debug them, save them, edit them. Everything that you could need to manage your flows, you will find over here. All right, now that we dragged the Zoho connector in here, everything you see in there, you can simply drag and drop into here, both connectors and helpers. And if you double click onto a connector action, onto a connector, then it will bring up this connector UI. And over here, you can select an action that you want to execute for this connector. Depending on your connector, there might be only a couple actions available. Depending on the connector, there might also be a lot of actions available. These are usually categorized into different tags. So here I will see everything that's related to accounts. We've got some general stuff, roles, settings, users, whatever makes sense for the connector. This gives it a bit more, makes it a bit easier to keep an overview of it for connectors with a lot of actions. For example, in this case, I would like to get all accounts that I have in my Zoho. So I click on accounts, and then over here, I see everything related to accounts. And in this case, I just want to do a simple get accounts, so a list, get request. I can select this. I could also, if I already knew what my action is called that I want to use, I can simply type in here. This is, of course, a bit quicker, but you need to know what you're looking for. And then I can simply select get accounts. The connector auth. This is where you select your login for the application. And I will actually show you how this works in just a sec. Actually, let's do this right now, because if you get into this overview and it's your first time for using an application, you will probably not have a connector auth yet, or you shouldn't at least, unless your colleague already set one up. And this means you actually need to tell our application what account you want to use. How do you do this? Well, if you don't have a connector auth yet, you can click on here to create a new connector auth. In case you already have a connector auth, like I do, we can actually go over here to our settings and then to connector auth. And then I opened this in a new tab for us. Over here, I can actually see all connector auths. And now I want to add a new connector auth for Zoho. So I type Zoho CRM in here, select this. And this one is OAuth 2. So it will actually bring me to Zoho to confirm the connection. Sometimes you might be required to enter an API key or username and password, depending on the API authentication that your connector is using. In this case, the only thing I need to do is press confirm, and this will actually take me to Zoho. I can click accept, and now it will add a connector authentication for Zoho. So if I go back to here, I open this again. Here is my new connector auth for Zoho. So I can select this, and this is what it's going to use to authenticate me with Zoho, so it knows which accounts it gets. And then down here in your connector action overview, you will see different fields depending on the action you selected. So these are basically the API parameters that the call needs. If something is required, you will see that it's marked with a red star. This means you will have to supply it. In this case, all the fields are actually optional, so we don't need to put anything in there. So I can just click apply changes. If there was a required field that you haven't set yet, it will actually tell you that you cannot save because you need to fill that field out. You can also over here switch to an advanced view, which will bring you into a kind of code overview. This is very convenient when your action uses something like Booleans, for example, which in the simple view, you would see a little switch, but maybe depending on your data, you want to either set it on or off, depending what the data is. In this case, we would switch to advanced view, and then we could write code in here to actually do this depending on the data. But for now, I will just click apply changes. Take another drink, because my throat is getting a little dry. And now I will drag a terminate in here. This is just a helper that will end the flow. This is because normally a flow always needs to have a start and an end. So you can't actually save a flow that only has a single connector. But for now, I want to demonstrate what it looks like when we execute this. So I just drag this in there, connect it. I click save. You don't have to do this actually, because if you click run now, if you watch this, it will actually say saved up here. It's just a good habit to save whenever you can. So now the flow run is started, and it will automatically, once the flow is finished, take me to the next overview. This is the flow debugger. Over here, I will get a list of all the times the flow has been executed, and I can click on one of these runs and then I will actually get details for every step that has been ran during the flow execution. This overview is great for debugging. So in this case, you can see, obviously, we only have success, but you would also see if there's an error. You would see this over here. And if you have a large flow, you would be able to click here, show errors, and then it would only show you the actual executions where the error happened, the actual steps. And I can click on one of these steps, and it will give me a lot of details regarding the execution. So here I can see the response code 200. In this case, obviously, that's what we want, but also error codes, whatever. I can see the actual URL that was requested. I can see when it ran exactly, and I can see the data I put in. In this case, this is nothing because we did a GET request. So a GET request does not have a body. But if we were to do a post or an update, for example, or put whatever, then we would be able to see the body that we sent over to the API. And we can also see the data that the API sent back to us. So over here, I will actually see some example accounts where the API returned from our account list. This I would usually recommend if you are starting to work with the flow. I would recommend just taking this, opening a notepad and copying all of that into there, because it will make it easier. You can leave this overview, basically, go back to your flow builder, and you can keep working, and you can always pull up your notepad without leaving this overview to see the data that has been returned by the API. Because, of course, we want to now use the data returned by the API. So, because we're dealing with a list here, we are going to look at one of our most important helpers, and that's the looper. If we drag the looper into here, we can actually get rid of the terminate. We don't need that anymore because, we now have more than a single step in this flow. So, good riddance. And now we have our looper. How does it work? We have a list that gets returned by get accounts that we want to do something with for every single element in that list. So the looper allows us to do exactly that. There's while and over loops. You can read it up in the docs, which one is which. In this case, or what they do, in this case, we want to iterate over because we want to do something for every step here. And now we put the reference for the looper in. I will put get accounts. And then we have two arrows that come away from this looper. The one on the right, which is titled action loop, is the one that's going to get executed for every single item in your array or list, whatever you want to call it. So these are the steps we want to take for every item. And then this is actually the continuation of the flow logic. So after everything was executed for every item that's over here, we actually go into this branch of the flow. We don't need this right now because we don't want to do anything after this looper ran. But this would be, for example, a great place to send yourself an email notification, send a message to your Slack, log something to Datadog, whatever you want to do. Just telling you that everything was successful. Now I want to do something for every account that we have in here. So I drag the looper in here. And now I'm going to get Cepdesk, which I want to create accounts for. And I connect this to the action loop. Actually, this connects automatically if you drag it in there, which is a new feature, which is very convenient and saves a lot of dragging around. I will delete this arrow for now. You could also leave it on there. I just want to delete it so it looks a bit nicer because this is the last step that we're going to take. And now, basically here, as you can see, we have a lot of different actions for this one. But what do I want to do? I actually want to create contacts, sorry. So here we have get create. We want to create a new one, create contact. So once again, I can select my connector auth. You can do this as well. or you do just create the new one. If you want to create a new one, you might have to save your flow before, because it's going to take you to the new, to the other overview in the connector auth, or you just go to the connector auth in a new tab, which is what I would recommend. Over here, we can now see the entire form for our accounts or customers or contacts or whatever you want to call it, contacts in this case. This is where we want to now dynamically insert data depending on what the actual looper step is, or what the actual element is that we loop over. To make things a little clearer, I will go to this looper and I will actually click edit over here. And here you can give names and references to your connectors. So here we are going to be iterating over all the accounts. So here I will say loop over accounts. And what do we get when we loop over a list of accounts? This actually turns into the single accounts 10 times over for 10 accounts. So I will call this here single account, just so that I know what I'm referring to when I use it later on. And now I have to select create customer, create contact. That's it. Create contact. Select my connector auth. All right. Now I want to insert data in here. So I know that the single account is going to be representative for every element in my array. So I will, to dynamically insert data into here, start a Jinja print statement. This is denoted by 2 of these curly braces opening and then closing again. And in here, we can pass references to data and Jinja, which you can also read up on in the docs. This is the templating language that will insert dynamic values in here. So I will add a reference to the single account element. You can also already see that the autocomplete will suggest this to me. I can click tab and actually let it autocomplete for me. And then I want to grab a specific element from the list that we have, or the object. So I will use bracket notation in this case. Dot notation will also work depending on the format of your row names, basically, or column names, sorry. In this case, I want to get the account underscore name in here. And this now, whenever this is executed, it will look at the object that single account is at that moment and execute, replace this value with the name of the account. We could now go on and do this for all of these. I will show you one more important element, and that is if statements. So for Jinja if statements, let's say the title, for some reason, our titles in Zoho are in German, and we want to have English titles in here. I can add an if statement in here, denoted by curly brackets with the percentage sign. So we use this, and this allows us to write if logic. So we will type, for example, if single account, and then here we want to get the title, and then we compare it to something. In this case, if this is Frau, for example, maybe we want to dynamically set the value in here to Miss. So we enter that, and then we can do a logic bracket again, and then we can say else, if this isn't the case, make this Mr. And then we can close the if statement with end if, and this will dynamically evaluate the data that the title field is, and insert the data between the closed brackets in here, depending on that. I highly recommend you read up on Jinja syntax in our docs, and the resources that we linked in our docs will make everything a lot easier for you. It looks a bit intimidating at first, but trust me, it's actually very simple syntax, and it takes maybe a couple minutes to get the basics of it going. And then this will allow you to create very, very dynamic and intelligent logic in here. I will just close this for now, and I will show you one more important feature, and that's our Boolean helper. Let's say that depending on the data that you get in here for the single account, for example, let's say you want to see if there is a telephone number. So we can actually dynamically insert that value in here as well. So we will take the single account again, and we will get the phone field. And then we can actually make sure that it's not equal to none. And this will compare and see, is there a phone number for my account? And then maybe if there is a phone number, I would get the Cepdesk connector again, and I would add a communication way to that account. And if there is not, I would probably just keep going with the next step. And then after I created this phone number, I will also keep going with the next step. So this is how you do conditional logic inside your flows. And then I will just discard this here. But obviously you want to save your stuff normally. And here I will show you an example of what this looks like when you've become a bit more adept, or if you finish building your first flow, if you're a prodigy, then this is how the logic might look later. Here we actually have specific input variables, which is country codes. This is a country lookup to match names to the ISO codes. Then you get the ISO codes for the EU. Stuff like this, you can use these dictionary helpers to store variables in here, and then you can reference these dynamically as well in here. For example, in this case, we create context from the Zoho context, but we also make sure that we set the right text rules depending on if they are a German company, if they are a company from the EU, or if they are outside EU. We create billing addresses. We check if there are shipping addresses that we need to create. We check if there is a website and if there's a phone number in there. And we will create all of that depending on the data that we have. And these flows can also get a lot bigger than this. So it is always a good idea to give your connectors good descriptive names and descriptive references. So when you return to your flows a couple of weeks later, say you went on vacation, you return to the office, you want to know what you're looking at. This will be a lot easier if you give everything a nice descriptive name. And yes, there we have the basics of our entire tool, basically for the automation side. Once your flow is looking good, you can go to edit, and you can set this from draft to live, and you can enter your email address into this field, and then you will get email notifications whenever an error occurs, so you can figure out what went on there. And here you can also change the data retention model for the flow. So if this has 10 in here, then it will actually delete the run data after 10 days. Depending on your use case, you might want to set this longer or shorter. Whatever floats your boat, you can put it in here, and this will adjust the data rules. We can save this. Now my flow is live. And if I go back to the flow monitoring, I can also see this over here. It's now set to live, and I will receive my email notifications. All right, I think that covers about it. If you want to learn how to use the webhook helper, for example, to use webhooks, how to use the REST helper to communicate with various REST APIs that are not integrated as connectors, we have separate videos on those. So you can go to our account or our docs and you should be able to find those rather easily. They will tell you everything you need to do. If there is stuff we haven't covered yet, which you are curious about, please let us know, and we will be happy to provide you with all the information needed. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day. Happy building, happy automating, and take care. See you next time.